Hello everyone, this is Maelstrom MTG back again with some Modern on Budget. Today we have a viewer requested deck, so if you have a deck that you would like me to try to build, then you can go ahead, toss it in the comment section, and I will do my best. There are some decks like decks that really heavily rely on things like Solitude, Fury, or just landfall decks that really care about having fetches. Those are a little harder to do. I don't imagine I could do a Titan deck, but I could always give it a go. So if you guys have any thoughts or comments or ideas for decks, go ahead, toss them in the comment section, and I will see what I can do. For this deck, we have the Rock, and if you don't know what the Rock is, it plays very similarly to Jund as a mid-range deck for Modern. What that means is that we're going to be using the early game to play things like removal and discard spells, and we're really going to be building up for the middle of the game where we are going to be in a we're going to bring it to a battle of top decks, and our goal is to have a better top deck than our opponent, or to be able to build something up in the meantime and be able to close out the game in that mid to late game. So to start us off, I'm going to show you the discard, the removal, then the creatures we have, a little bit of the utility we have elsewhere. We do have Learn in here, which is I like Learn, and I think this is one of the decks that might be able to pull it off in Modern, but I don't think it'll be able to do it in very many places. So start us off, we have Inquisition and Kozilek, my favorite my favorite discard spell of the game. It says target player reveals their hand, then you choose a non-land card from it with mana value 3 or less, and then they discard that. This can hit just about anything, namely their turn 1 play. So if you're going first or if you're going second, you can grab their turn 2 play. If they're trying to set up for a turn 2 play or turn 3 play, you can go ahead, do this on your first turn, and they'll be shit out of luck. The next discard spell we have is Duress, and Duress is going to be our substitute for Thoughtseize, but it is not an underachiever whatsoever. You can't hit creatures with it, but it does exactly what Thoughtseize does beyond that, and this has been a consistent choice of a replacement for Thoughtseize across all of my budget lists. It is a fantastic card, and just because it's 20 cents doesn't mean that it's bad, and doesn't mean you shouldn't play it. The reason why we only have 6 discard spells is because we don't want to dilute our actual game plan of having fewer than that. We don't want to have fewer than that because we won't consistently hit them. But if we have more than that, then we're going to be worsening our top decks. We're going to be worsening our mid to late game. So really, 6 is a very nice sweet spot, and you should be happy with it. For removal, we have Fatal Push. Fatal Push is probably the prime removal spell in the deck right here, because it's going to hit most of the creatures you need to deal with in the early game, and it can scale to the late game. If they have like an Omnath or something, you can still hit with this. If they have a Solitude or Fury, that's a little harder to deal with since we can't revolt it, which is why we have Bloodchief's Thirst, which can hit anything as long as you kick it. It can hit Planeswalkers as well, which is very useful if you're going up against Control, or if you're going up against Jund. They might have Ren and 6. If you're going up against any mirror matches, you might go against the Leon of the Veil. It hits most things. So if it's a creature, Planeswalker, it doesn't have hexproof or indestructible, this gets rid of it. So it's a very nice card. If you're noticing that your Fatal Push is underperforming in your metagame, you can go to more of a split of 3 to 2 Fatal Pushes and try to fill out the Bloodchief's Thirst maybe a little more. But if you're going up against Control a lot, you might even debate going up a few Abrupt Decays, maybe 2 or 3. Hopping over to Abrupt Decay, though, we have the spell can't be countered, and it destroys any non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less, and it's a 2-drop. So this can hit Teferi Time Raveler, it can hit any pesky creatures, it can hit a Chalice of the Void on 1 or 2, and so it can really get just about anything in the anything in the early to mid game, you should be able to deal with, and then you can get your stuff. I don't know why my room does this, but it turns the light off automatically. Um, Now, Abrupt Decay, fantastic card. I only have it as a one of because I like my other removal spells in here a little more because they're a little easier to use. We have my favorite removal spell in the deck, Maelstrom Pulse. It's the namesake of this channel. In case anyone out there was thinking it was Maelstrom Wanderer, no, it's Maelstrom Pulse. I'm that kind of person. But it destroys any non-land permanent and then any cards with the same name. So you pick one pesky thing and you wipe the board. This is not only in here because it's namesake, but also because it's useful in the current meta. Anything like Urza Saga tokens to Dragon's Rage Chandlers, you can just, or even any pesky planeswalkers, you can just wipe them out. It's a very nice way to go into the later game. It's a counterable Abrupt Decay with more power. Then we have Weatherbloom Command as sort of our Swiss Army knife. It gives us a way to it gives us mill to fill our graveyard or to mill away their scry, and then we return a land to our hand. Then we destroy a non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. That can hit a number of things. My favorite thing to hit with that is Ether Vial. Target creature gets -3/-1 till end of turn. This won't kill everything in the format, but it might be used as a pre-combat trick to lower their power, maybe in toughness. It might be used post-combat to kill off a creature that didn't quite die, or it might just be used, probably its best use is just straight up killing a creature with 1 toughness. Then we have target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Now, if you have if the spell costs 2 mana, then you can pick 2 options. You want to look at this and treat each one of these options as a value of 1 mana. And if you do that, because you're getting 2 of these for 1 mana each, and if you do that, this is a very powerful, very sweet card. And honestly, it surprises me a little that it's still as cheap as it is, but I'm not going to complain. But this card, fantastic. If you play with it, you'll fall in love immediately. Just quickly, while we're still on our interaction with our opponent, while we're still on what we're using to sort of like shut them out, we do have 4 Nile Spell Bombs in the main deck to deal with all those pesky graveyard decks, as well as a way to just cantrip. Worst case scenario, let's say we're going up against another deck that just doesn't care about the graveyard. We can play this anyway, tap it, sack it, and then just pay a black to draw a card. We can do that. It's okay. But then we have our creatures. Our usual, if we have no discard spell to play on turn 1, usually our other turn 1 play is like Noble Hierarch. A lot of what you're going to be doing in this deck is just swinging in with 1 or 2 creatures, and that's how you're going to win. And Exalted, which is it pumps up any creature that's attacking alone, and that's a way that we can pump up all of our dudes, well, one of our dudes, I guess, and get in some extra damage, get in some extra pressure. Not to mention it's a mana dork, which really helps us hit everything we need. Doc the Voidwalker is a fantastic card. I love this. I played 4 of these instead of Ragavans in MTG Las Vegas, and I caught so many people off guard, and this was able to, whenever my opponent footfalled into 2 4/4 rhinos, I was able to match their 2/2 rhino, their 2 4/4 rhinos, because I would just free cast the spell. I would be able to replay it with Duress. This deck doesn't have Duress, but it still shows the power of the card. If you have more of these, you can add them in, probably over the Overgrown Arches, but the Overgrown Arches are a sweet way to include a unique mechanic to the deck. Grimflayer is a way to sort of fill your own graveyard, but also to pump itself up. It's a 4/4 trample most of the time, and you're also able to filter through your deck, which is fantastic with this. Overgrown Arch, you're going to be using as a defender to try to block off any early damage. You can tap it to gain life every turn, and then when you're done with it, you can sack it, or if they try to kill it, you can sack it to learn. And learn, you can grab something out of your sideboard. We'll talk about that when we talk about the sideboard. Scavenging Ooze. If you haven't seen this card in a while, I agree, I haven't seen it in a while, but it's a very standard rock card, and so tossing in here, it's graveyard hate. It pumps up, it gains life. It does everything you want it to do in a deck like this. The last card is a 1/of Tireless Tracker, and that's whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, and then whenever you sack a clue, put a counter on it. You have a few ways to get. You have one way really to get double landfall in one turn with Evolving Wilds, but you are also able to just pump this up by drawing cards with clues. The last card here is Poet's Quill. It's a way that we can try to compete with Shadow Spear by giving our creature lifelink, pumping up our creature. It's Modern is a grind today, and if you aren't able to gain life with your opponent, you're going to fall behind very quickly. This also allows us to learn, so it has that synergy with our deck beyond just lifelink. Our lands are Evolving Wilds for landfall and mana fixing. We have our forests as a 5 and our swamps as a 6. 6 because we want to really prioritize getting black mana on turn 1 so that we can play our discard spell on turn 1. Then we have Temple of Malady as a scry and Witherbloom Campus as a reusable scry. These are 8 tap lands in the deck and 12 if you count Evolving Wilds, so hitting a turn 1 discard spell is reliant on getting those 6 swamps, but a turn 2 discard spell is not the worst thing in the world. It's just that we want that turn 1 discard spell. For our sideboard, we have Duress. Our main game plan, our main board, we don't want more than 6, but some decks like Control will be bringing in Duress. Cram Session for any aggro deck, any burn. Burn is really our primary reason for having this, so that you can try to mitigate some of their damage while also getting some of the other cards in our sideboard. Then we have Gaia's Blessing for mill hate. We have Void Mirror for any evoke hate or force hate, or even Eldrazi Tron since it's in the meta now. Wilt we have for any artifact enchantment hate, and then the rest of them are lessons. We have Necrotic Fumes as an extra removal spell. We have Expanded Anatomy as a pump spell. We have Containment Breach as an artifact enchantment thing that's tutorable. We have Fractal Summoning so that we can just create a big creature in the late game. These can compete with Tarmogoyfs. A lot of our creatures in our deck can try to compete with Tarmogoyfs, but they can grow so quickly that Fractal Summoning is probably our best bet to match it. And Environmental Sciences is a way for us to search our deck for more lands and then gain some life while we're at it. This is if we don't have a specific thing we want to do, we can grab Environmental Sciences, and it helps if we've already grabbed Fractal Summoning. Fractal Summoning is great as well, and this is probably, if I don't have something specific I need to grab for a hate card, I'll grab Fractal Summoning. Anyway, this is the list. I'm sorry if it was maybe a little hard to follow. I'm a little boggled right now, but I hope you enjoyed the list. I will leave the list in the description if you need that. And as you can see, our list is 98.68 in paper. I don't care about MTGO really. I only do paper. And so this is sub $100. And so we've met our goal. And thank you to whoever requested Rock, because it was a fun deck to try to build, especially after playing Jund for the entirety of the year. This was a nice way to shake things up, so thank you. And to the rest of you, I will see you next time.